Hi, it's Mary Kay. I wanted to show you how I made this folder from one 12 by 12 piece of paper. This paper came in the memory keeping kits this month. I, in the past, have showed how I made a folder, a pocket folder, out of planner paper. So this is the 6 by 8 paper. It's two pieces of the feather paper. One of them's cut a little wider than the other, and then they're glued together. So the seam is in here. Can't see it. I have lined it, but if you don't count the paper I lined it with, which I just had extra, it's one piece or two pieces of feather paper plus one more piece of paper that I've cut into these shapes and then taped on using my clear washi tape, which is also known as Scotch tape. So that's how I make it from the planner papers. But I wanted to show you how I do it from one big piece of 12 by 12 paper. I filmed myself making this folder and then discovered that I had somehow switched to slow-mo partway through. So I didn't really think you wanted to watch 40 minutes of me making a folder in slow motion. So instead, I will use another piece of paper to make it and show you how that works. So this is from the planner paper, coordinating paper, the paper add-on paper. And those are all made by other manufacturers. The Cocoa Daisy papers that come in the planner, in the memory keeping 12 by 12 kit are all exclusive. So you cut off the tear strip, and then what you want to do, so a B6 is 5 inches this way and 7 inches that way, which is why a 12 by 12 piece of paper is perfect to use. But it's only 5 inches wide, and in this case, I don't need it to be 12 inches. I need it to be 10, so it folds up into 5. I'm going to cut it, though, slightly more than 10 inches. I'm cutting off slightly less than 2 to leave it a little bit wider. That's because I want to do the kind of spine thing, the gutter thing here, to give it a little more, so it'll hold a little bit more once it's in my planner. And it also stays on the strings better when you do that. So a little bit less than 2 inches cut off on one side. And of course, depending on the pattern, you might have to decide what you want to cut off and so on. Then I use my handy scoreboard that I love very much. On the inside, the back side of the paper, I'm going to score it at 5 inches. But because I cut it a little wider than 10, I need to move it up a little because it's so long it doesn't fit. There we go. Because I cut it a little wider than 10, I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing again. And then that will give me that little gutter, that little spine to my folder. Then I need to score it 7 inches from the top, whichever the top is. I don't think it matters with this pattern. I'm going to score it 7 inches from the top because that's going to be the flap that folds up from the bottom. So let me get my finished one out and see if I can show you. So here is the finished one. Here's the score line for both of them. And this part is going to become these flaps. So the first thing I have to do to make that happen is I have to cut apart basically those two pockets. You could make them, here I'll show you. You could just leave them together. There's no real rule about this. But if you did that, it doesn't, just doesn't come out as nice and neat, and I think it looks better if you cut them apart because they function independently. I'm also going to cut about 1 inch off of this flap part because I don't like it quite as long as it is. So I'm going to cut that off too. All my measurements are here, so it's super easy. Don't have to mark anything to cut it or anything like that. I don't have time for that. Now I'm going to cut into the middle of those pockets. This trimmer is great because the edge of this plastic is exactly where it's going to cut. So it's really easy to do precision cuts, and you know just what you're about to cut into with this trimmer. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Now you notice I'm not cutting all the way up. I don't want to do that because that would ruin my pocket. I'm just cutting into the middle. And now I'm going to cut off this piece that got trimmed out. And now I have my 2 pockets in my little folder. Now, I prefer them to be, for them to have kind of an angle on them. You wouldn't have to do that. You can do this any way you want to, but I will show you how I do the angle. I fold it back up, and taking care to use to cut on the side that is on the inside. Last time, I'll show you my mistake. I started doing this tutorial. This is my 3rd try. I started doing this tutorial, and when I got to this step, I cut the wrong side. So everything kind of falls out. Definitely not ideal. All right, so you want to make sure that when you fold this up and you line them up neatly, you're cutting into the side on the fold and not on the outside. And then you just cut up however much you want off of it. I do put the corner up against the fence just to be sure I'm steady. And then when you fold them up, you have your pockets. And it ends up looking kind of like the folders that you used to have in high school. Now again, I like to use my clear washi tape. Can you hear the air quotes there? I like to use, but you could use regular washi tape, whatever you want. Actual washi tape to tape these up. You can also glue them, but I find that does not work very well because it interferes with the pocket itself, and you end up, it's not good. So I recommend tape of some kind. So you tape them up, and then you have a pocket. So that is how I make my little pockets for my B6. Now, you can certainly do this with a 12 by 12 piece of paper. You can do it for personal. You can do it for standard. Standard, you'd have a little less to fold up, so you'd have to mess with that. But standard is a little more than an inch taller than this. And I cut off an inch, so I feel like it would be plenty to do it for standard. In fact, I think I did do it with standard when I used to use it. It's been so long since February. So that's how you do it. And the other thing I discovered quite by accident, but I like to do, is to cut just a little notch at the top and bottom of each one, because that just makes it sit on the string better. Here, I'll show you. The notch off the top and bottom just makes it nestle onto the string and sit well, and I don't know, I just like it better that way. So that's how I make a pocket out of a piece of 12 by 12 paper. Thank you.